What is your childhood memory that you thought was normal but realized it was traumatic later in your life? When I was 11, my parents helped a battered wife out of an abusive situation. Her husband was a bad guy but was still roaming free. Nobody knew where he was, and he had made serious threats against my family. My mom ran me through the steps if he were to break in. I would get my younger siblings in the closet with me. She would run and draw him out and away from the house to a predetermined location in the backyard. Once they left, I would take the shotgun out of the closet and shoot him. I was groomed to kill a man at 11. Never had to, but totally prepared. When it was my weekend with my dad, I would be dropped off at people's houses and I thought it was fun because it was also different and got to meet new people. When I got older, I realized it was neglect and he was palming me off while he went elsewhere. We, my mother, my siblings and I, used to go on those luawang walks around the city when we were super young. I recently discovered that it was a way for my mother to escape our father and save us from getting beaten almost to death. Fun stuff. My big brother used to give me treats, M&Ms, brownies, cheese and bread. Only years later did I realize he was sneaking me food because we were not being fed. I am healthy and functional today because a 3-year-old stole food for me. A 3-year-old? Holy crap. It's amazing and sad what young children can learn when they have to. I hope you're both doing well now. When my mum was having a bad day, before I'd leave by myself for primary school, she would say, if I'm not here when you get back, you know why, implying that she would kill herself because of her stressful life. I'd spend the whole day at school worrying. One weird example was when my older brother and I asked for Digimon starter decks for Christmas, but my mom and her boyfriend only had money for one for my brother. I got some cheap squirt guns or something. My mama had to leave for whatever reason and I was pouting. My mom's boyfriend asked me what was wrong and I told him I didn't get a Digimon deck. He went over to my brother and asked him if that was true. My brother looked scared and said yes. All I remember is him hitting my brother all over and my brother screaming, trying to crawl away while he dragged him by his legs from the living room into the kitchen, hitting him all over. Then I remember him throwing him an ice pack. It was normal cause we were beat all the time and it only seemed fair he should get beat real bad since he got the Digimon deck, but I didn't. My mom leaving me at different places with different people for months at a time. Or when we would be driving, I remember there would be times where she would tell me about the school she was going to take me to and that I would live there. I remember her describing the horses they had, lies, and how much I would love it. She never ended up taking me there but would always talk about it like it was some magical place. Found out from my uncle years later it was an orphanage. Only reason she didn't end up taking me is because he threatened to kill her if she did. My mom used to give me enemas when I misbehaved. I didn't realize until I made a joke about it during my first semester of college and everyone looked at me in stunned silence that it was not a normal punishment. Edit. To my fellow friends who have been punished in similar ways, I love you. There's so many to choose from, but one that sticks out is mum and dad constantly falling asleep on the couch when they were really on the nod from doing smack. Great way to leave a 6-year-old and a newborn baby. Hey, I grew up just like that too. I ended up hooked on heroin myself in my 20s. Got clean 4-ish years ago. Crazy way to live. Even crazier to think about having kids mixed up in it all. When I was in the 2nd grade, my older sister came into the bathroom while I was taking a bath to play with my toys with me. I didn't find out until later it was because my father was having a stroke from drinking too much and was making sure I didn't finish taking a bath before the paramedics arrived. Being 16 and finding out that I was the only one of my peers in that class who was still being beaten by their parents regularly. The oldest anyone was the last time they were physically punished was 10 years younger than I was the night before, the last time I was beaten. My friend's uncle wanted me and my friend to model clothes for a catalog. I didn't go but later discovered that store didn't and never had sold clothing. Turned out he was a pedophile and had been sexually abusing my friend for years. I think we were 8 or 9 at the time. There used to be this man that would live at my house when I was about 3-5ish named Skip, and whenever I would walk by him he would ask me, "You wanna see my sexy leg?" to which I would always respond yes enthusiastically. He would then roll up his pant leg really high and rub his thigh up and down while dog whistling. At the time I thought it was fucking hilarious. Well, turns out he was my dad's meth dealer who needed a place to stay because he was being investigated for murder. My cousin's extremely religious mother would practice rapture drills with her. This consisted of her mom bursting into her room at like 3 AM, banging pots and pans together, and screaming,
"It's the rapture. The rapture is happening. Will you be saved?"
She would then make my cousin confess her sins to her and then tell her that she would be going to hell for her sins. It terrified her. But she thought that this was a normal thing that all families' mothers do until adulthood when she casually mentioned it in conversation and the whole room went silent. Her now husband had to explain to her that no, that is not normal. My parents fighting all night followed by my dad packing a bag, getting in his car, my mom standing in front of the car so he couldn't leave. Then threatening divorce every other day and then being all over each other on their good days. I had no idea what a healthy relationship was until my husband and I went to marriage counseling and I saw how toxic that all was and how much it stuck. My mom would hide me in the trunk of our car while she drove around at night looking for my dad at his favorite bars. She would eventually find him. They would be yelling. And once I peeked out the back window and saw what I now realize was my dad and a nasty prostitute. For your information, my mom dragged me along because she couldn't leave me home alone. When I was 5, I was home alone. I found a box of matches and brought them to my room. I burned a piece of paper on my carpeted floor, creating a scorch mark in my room. Fortunately, there wasn't a fire. When my dad and stepmom got home, they had put me in the bathtub for a bath. My stepmom was enraged. She grabbed a lighter from her pocket. Then she grabbed my hand. She placed my hand onto an ignited flame for roughly 5-10 seconds. Memory is hazy, but I remember. My parents couldn't pick me up from school on time and I wasn't allowed to walk home, so I'd just sit in the cold for hours on the pavement waiting. Always happened, so didn't know any better. Was constantly scared of my older brother and how he might behave. Thought this was just how older brothers are. He'd make me leave the house for 8 hours when he was supposed to be looking after me while my parents were gone. We lived in a pretty rural area and other than going to a shop to buy sweets there a thing to do for more than an hour. Told me I'd understand when I was older. I still don't understand. My mother would have to regularly go on rescue missions to stop my grandmother from killing herself. I would get phone calls saying I'm on the way to grandma's again. One time my dad threw a temper tantrum and threw a plate full of food at the ceiling because my mom hadn't gotten the right sauce. I thought it was funny at the time, but looking back that's an awful way for an adult to act. When I was around 8, my best friend at the time used to steal bad food from her pantry and we'd go into her room and she'd then explain to me how we had to be skinny, because being skinny meant boys would like us, and so she would then meticulously read the backs of the cookie packs and count out every cookie and how many calories there were for each of us. She also was obsessed with shaving all her body and would try and pressure me into shaving my legs and arms. Once again, boys liked it when you were hairless. I never really grasped how bizarre it was for 8-year-olds to count calories and be hairless for boys. Years later, my primary school had a national scandal where 10-12-year-olds were sexually abusing each other on the mat during class, at lunchtime, and any opportunity they had. I can remember lots of peer pressure for kids to finger each other and make out because that meant you were cool and liked by the hot boys. I was very fortunate to not be involved, and looking back it honestly so fucked up. Don't know if any of it was related, but just from 7-12 it was quite gross. I know that whenever a kid got home late it was normal for them to be locked outside for the night. Also thought an appropriate response to not doing your chores was to be locked in a closet without food. My younger siblings never got this treatment. I just thought I was an extra awful child. My ex-stepdad shot me almost point blank with a pellet gun. The same night, he tricked me into stepping on the hot remains of a firework. He laughed and laughed like it was hilarious as I was sobbing. Still got the pellet gun scar. What a prick. As a kid, I used to brag about being able to sleep for over 24 hours straight to friends or teachers or really whoever would listen. I was mid-sentence mentioning it as a freshman in college when I realized my divorced father was drugging preschool me with cold meds so I'd sleep through his weekends of custody with me. It really fucked up my sense of reality for a while. My father and I had a game when I was a child. Help daddy remember what hospital he went to last. My father was mentally ill and would hurt himself purposely to get more anxiety, antipsychotic and pain drugs. There were 5 hospitals within a 2-hour drive of us, and in those days, early 90s late 80s, there were no computer systems to track him like there is now. He would literally break his own fingers, burn himself with oil, anything to get what he needed. And it was my job to help him remember, so he wouldn't get caught. After he took his life when I was 12, I had a lot of feelings and scary memories to deal with. It's been a long hard road, but I hope wherever his is, he's not in pain anymore. Edit. Thank you for all the kind messages and gilding. I'm in therapy and have been for about 10 years. For all his shortcomings, my dad was amazing to me. He was so kind to me. I just miss him. I've always been a daddy's girl, and he took a piece of me with him. Hugs. You have been visited by subscription doggo. Like and subscribe to make him happy.